The film which you are about to see is an account of the tragedy which befell a group of 5 youths, in particular, Sally Hardesty and her invalid brother, Franklin. It is all the more tragic in that they were young. But had they lived very, very long lives, they could not have expected, nor would they have wished to see as much of the mad and macabre as they were to see that day. For them, an idyllic summer afternoon drive became a nightmare. The events of that day were to lead to the discovery of one of the most bizarre crimes in the annals of American history, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
So, as you know, Trevor.
Yep.
We do a lot of horror films.
Yes, we do indeed.
And
that's an understatement.
Exactly. And that's always going to be 75% of our genre.
Yeah.
But after spending I've watched, for this tiny little last minute retrospective of the Texas Chainsaw films, I watched the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, then I watched the new one twice.
Right.
Then
Your game?
I researched it. Yeah, I researched it. So altogether, I'd say about 6 hours of carnage.
Yes.
Man, I feel like something's wrong. Like, I just feel numb.
I know what you mean. Yeah, it can be draining after a while, especially with a series like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Original aside, although it's intense and it's brilliantly intense, but we'll talk later about the sequels. But yeah, it's for want of a better phrase, it's overkill.
Hey everybody, welcome for joining the conversation here. Welcome to Citizen Frame. I am here with Trevor as always.
Always nice to be here, Ciaran.
Thank you. We are here, as we probably were eavesdropping. How rude. We're here to talk the Texas Chainsaw Massacres. Well, the first one and the so-called requel.
Yeah.
As you know, requels are pretty popular now thanks to Halloween and the Scream franchise.
Yes.
Kind of giving rebirth to a lost series. And they've done it well. So we decided let's talk about, obviously, the classic, and then we'll get to the requel.
Yes, and we're going to skip about 8 other sequels.
So, Tobe Hooper. Now, I hate bad-mouthing the man, because there's flashes of genius with him. But I'm going to be blunt. He never really found his footing. And I mentioned this before with Poltergeist, when we did the retrospect, just Poltergeist in general. And what I've noticed with his stuff, and I like a lot of his stuff, but the mass general public didn't. But he just never, he did some big, like Invaders from Mars, I think he did, and then he did a movie called Life Force, which was about alien vampires. Mm-hmm. And he just didn't take off. Both of them just bombed, and they were both big budgets. And he never found his footing since then.
For me,
he went back.
Yeah, sorry,
he did a couple horror films after he did Texas, which I really enjoy. Obviously, we'll probably get to it down the road. The remake coming out called Salem's Lot.
Yes, the TV film miniseries.
Yeah,
4 hour. Yeah, I mean, I love that. So do.
Yeah, it's good
stuff.
Best work. Back to the more the Nosferatu kind of vampire.
Yes.
And then you've got a fun little one called The Funhouse, which I enjoyed, that he did, going back to the more grindhouse horror.
Yes.
That he's known for. But that being said, yeah, so we're talking to Texas Chainsaw, and the reason I bring this up is because I watched this again, and I always say it through the podcast eyes, and I'm disappointed that he never really, like Wes Craven started this way as well. He did, obviously, as he was doing Texas, Craven just recently did Last House on the Left.
Yes.
Which is that grindhouse, very just disturbing.
Exploitation film.
Exactly. But it took a while, but with Craven, it took him a while to find his footing as well. He had little glimpses like The Hills Have Eyes, but it wasn't until 1984 where he did Nightmare, where he could write his own ticket. Mm-hmm. Tobe Hooper went the same route, started going, still making horror. The Funhouse, like I just mentioned, Salem's Lot. Then he got his big one, his Nightmare, which was in Poltergeist. But because that was so surrounded in controversy, who actually directed that, I think he just lost his footing.
He never really,
He never recovered from that.
And he never really, his career sort of was running parallel to Wes Craven's, and he never really did, he never really made it as big as Craven.
Yeah, and he did a lot of TV and stuff. And again, guys, this is not taking away from the guy's work. I'm just saying it's unfortunate these filmmakers kind of don't, they're like one-hit wonders when you think about it. Because at the end of the day, nobody knows who directs Salem's Lot. Nobody knows who directed The Funhouse, or if they even know what the film is. And I do because I'm a fanboy. But so you get these sometimes I think it could be because with Poltergeist, it was a big budget extravaganza and special effects and stuff. He's never done that before.
Yeah, he was more used to the sort of low budget and sort of having to be creative with a budget and having to be just creative in general.
Yes.
Yeah, he's more of an independent film director as opposed to the big budget Hollywood blockbuster director.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying, though. I don't think he ever got his shot. He should have baby-stepped himself into it like Carpenter did. Yes. I think it's funny how, how Tobey came up with the idea of the Texas Chainsaw. It was brilliant. He was in a hardware store.
Yes.
Or some kind of big shop.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was packed with people, probably like a fucking Black Friday.
Yeah.
And he was in a rush, and all these people, he couldn't get through them, and he was trying to find a way to get through them, and the first thing he saw was a chainsaw.
Yeah, that would be one way of doing it.
Yeah, and so that's how he came up with the concept of a killer, and then he took the rest from Ed Gein.
Yes, apparently his grandmother lived in Wisconsin, where Ed Gein was from, and apparently he grew up listening to these real life horror stories from her about Ed Gein, who apparently his grandmother and their family lived quite close to. He couldn't actually remember Ed Gein's name, but those stories always stuck with him about Ed Gein.
Gein, isn't it Gein?
Oh, I mean, tomato.
Yeah, I know.
But yeah, that grave robbing guy, basically.
I mean, Ed Gein was kind of popularized by
Psycho.
Yeah,
because of the motherly obsession thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. And leaving the mother in the
and also
the basement.
The Silence of the Lambs as well sort of references him with the character of Buffalo Bill.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
Ed Gein wasn't actually technically wasn't actually a serial killer. He killed 2 people. However, he was more of a grave robber. And whenever the police sort of raided his farmhouse, they found this complete house of horrors, like the Sawyer house is in Texas Chainsaw Massacre, with lampshades made of human skin, drums made of human skin, and all this horrific debris, bones and all sorts. But he was more of a grave robber.
Well, the Texas Chainsaw kind of took Ed Gein, and everyone thinks it's Leatherface, but Ed Gein's character, Ed Gein, now you got me saying, Ed Gein's character was really kind of mixed. The grave robbing was really the hitchhiker in this film. Mm-hmm. Then you had the cook who cooked the food, if you know where I'm going with that one. And then you had the person who wore the different outfits as a face, skin, different masks.
Leatherface is basically the, I don't mean this in an offensive way, but he's the mentally handicapped brother or younger brother or whatever. He's childlike. And he's basically, he kills because he feels under attack. He's almost to be pitied, that sort of thing. And I sort of always felt that anyway, but after reading up about it, that is indeed how Gunnar Hansen and Toby Hooper approached the character.
Yeah, he's a simpleton.
Yes, yeah.
I'm sorry to offend anybody. It's the perfect way to explain it. It shows in the film. We'll kind of get to the couple of scenes. Let's just dive into it a bit here. So this one we've got Sally, the hitchhiker, Leatherface, Jerry, Franklin, Kirk, Pam, the old man, and the grandfather.
Yes.
It's pretty easily. Most of the film, believe it or not, as you guys know, takes place in the van. Mm-hmm. And it kind of introduces you all these different characters. These are just free-loving hippies. And they're going to visit they're going there where they kind of spent their summers, their uncles.
Yes, house. It was Sally and Franklin's. I think it was their grandfather. He originally owned the house back in the day before the Sawyer family moved in, type thing. So they were going to check it out, and obviously they took their sort of hippie friends with them.
Okay.
I think it's something along those lines. I might have got, and maybe the house that their grandfather Franklin owned was a different house, but there is a connection there anyway.
The opening sequence is the quick flashes, and you hear the camera sound of that weird creaking camera. It sounds like a door opening.
Yes.
The quick flashes, and we find out there's been a grave robbery in this local town. And there's a shot, we talk about the cinematography, this is it right here, where somebody's done a monument of this dead body on top of a tomb.
Yeah, in the cemetery.
Or a gravesite.
Yeah.
It looks like it's melting.
It's a really sort of, it's a brilliant setup. You know, this is grim, fucking brutal horror world. We're getting into hell here, a journey into hell.
Yeah, it pretty much sets you up like this is not what you think it's going to be. We're turning the tables in horror here. Mm-hmm. This isn't Hammer horror or Castle horror.
Yes,
this is going to be something a little more different.
I love the documentary feel of not just that opening, but also the film as a whole.
Yeah, well, the opening, the narration, which is John Larroquette,
yes,
who's went on to win a bunch of Emmys for a great show called Night Court in the States. Mm-hmm. And yeah, he said that he was a radio DJ at the time.
Yeah, he's got the voice for it. Yeah,
yeah, and he was offered a joint to do it.
That's yes, apparently that's just. But yep, I heard that as well, or read up on it. Yep.
Yeah. See, guys, 6 hours. That's why my mind's just going crazy over Texas Chainsaw Massacre right now. All this little shit we know. But yeah, so we were introduced to the hitchhiker, and these hippies pick him up, and he's just a nut job.
Yeah,
crazy. I would have kicked him out of the car. I wouldn't have even picked him up, to be honest with you.
Yeah, he looks deranged and demented right from the off. When
they kick him out after he goes apeshit, they have this. He cuts his hand and he puts a marking on their van.
Yes.
Kind of like, we're going to mark you. I get that. We're tagging you. We're going to get you. That's what he's doing. Mm-hmm. But was there a picture? Was that a bird he drew, or what was that?
Oh, I don't know. I think it was just a general sort of fucking...
It looked like a crow.
Yeah, I mean, it's open to debate. I think it was just, he was just basically rubbing blood on the... And I don't even think he was that elaborate enough to just say that you marked. I think he was just doing it just because he was... I don't think he was that elaborate or even... intellectually sort of sound enough to even think that far ahead. I think he was just basically fucking about as he was doing as soon as he got into the van. I don't think it's as sort of elaborate as that.
Yeah, that's right. I figured that. I just was curious because they kept looking at it quite a bit, and Franklin keeps eyeing it. Does this mean something? Kind of thing. Let's talk about the other characters. Are pretty grounded. Seem like pretty nice people. Mm-hmm. But let's talk about fucking Franklin.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
He's annoying as fuck. However,
here's the problem I have with it, and I thought about this. A, they did it deliberately because you wanted him to get it. So if he's in a wheelchair, you can get away with killing him. It sounds horrible to say that.
No, yeah.
So when he does get it, however, they turn the tables because the second act, where he goes out with his sister Sally to find everybody in the dark, and the poor guy's by himself. He can't. He's fucked.
Yes, big time.
He becomes a little more grounded, so you kind of feel sorry for him when the comeuppance happens.
A lot of people, I've heard a lot of people criticize the character, and while I admit he was annoying, it didn't jar for me because real people can be annoying. Yes, he's irritating and stuff, but again it goes back to the sort of neo-realistic feel of the film as a whole. Yeah, and also apparently the actor who played him, I can't remember his name, he basically stayed in character throughout the entire shoot. He was a method actor as well, and apparently, so he actually does a very good job. So he does.
Oh, I just thought it was too much, but I think Toby did that so we knew when he does get it, we're like, whew, thank God.
Good riddance.
I do. When they get to the gas station, and that's where we meet the old man.
Yes, the cook.
The cook. He's warning them. That's right. He does. He warns them. You don't want to go to your uncle's house, wherever.
And he sort of,
because he doesn't like the killing.
He's a reluctant killer.
That's right. Okay, I forgot about that because he says at the dinner scene.
Yes.
Where he goes, I don't like killing.
Yes.
It's not for me. So he was warning them. I did get that.
You know what I noticed for the first time as well on watching it, for the podcast, and it didn't click with me before, but it is also heavily suggested that the barbecue meat that they buy in his gas station is human flesh.
Yeah, but that's where they get their food.
Yes. Mm-hmm. I knew that. I don't know. I just fucking went over my head on previous viewings of it, because it was more concentrated.
Yeah, they're cannibals. Yeah, you didn't know that?
But I just think that was pretty cool that the actual, not cool in a sort of macabre way, and that the actual teenagers were actually also cannibals as well by default, by proxy.
Yeah, they kind of show that in the prequel that they did. Texas Chainsaw the beginning, that happened.
Yes, and also later on, whenever Sally has run away and she thinks she's got away from Leatherface, in the famous chase sequence, she ends up back in the gas station, and the camera lingers on a shot of her looking at the barbecue meat, and that's when it's obvious then that that's human meat.
Yeah, they did that because once they go back to the barbecue pit, whatever it was,
yes,
they reference it again to let you know they're eating them. That's why let's jump into the killings here. So, and first again, it will be Kirk. You got Kirk and Pam.
It's the most powerful killing out of them all, I would say.
I would say, what's funny? All these actors went out, they did nothing.
Yeah,
they went out and did their own thing. Some of them a lot of them walked away because the film shoot of this was terrible.
They went through hell.
Yeah, the heat and everything was, especially Texas heat.
Yes.
And it's a dry heat in Texas too. Mm-hmm. So they go to the house. They go to the house, and I do like the setup where they couldn't get gas at the gas station because the guy says he was waiting for the gas pumps to get full again.
Yes. And
so they go to visit the aunt's house, uncle's house, wherever it is. And Franklin says there's a swimming area. You guys can go follow the path. Uh-huh. So they decide to go follow the path, and obviously the water's gone. It's drained. The water's gone. It's drained, and it's no longer there. But they hear a generator going. So it's a nice way of bringing them to the Texas house. Yeah. Called the Chainsaw House.
Sawyer house.
So they go, they probably have gas there because we can hear a generator. Mm-hmm. So it's a good way of getting them to point A to point B. And so when they get there, obviously these two deaths, you don't see anything. It's nothing by today's standards. In fact, this film got a PG.
Yes. The first time I first watched this film, the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre many years ago, but the first killing of Kirk has always stuck in my mind because up to this point, nothing bad has happened. Apart from the opening that sets a really grim sort of tone. But up until this point, nobody's been killed. Obviously, you've had the Hitchhiker getting on like a psycho and stuff, but it's just such a shock, and it just comes almost out of the blue, and it's happened so fast. But it's also Kirk's reaction, which is so realistic, with the body's like sort of convulsing. That's fucking real. That's so powerful.
Yeah, that's to me is more disturbing. Even if that came out today, it'd probably still get an R just because of the effects it had. And
it happens so quick, and it's so realistic. He just whacks him with a hammer and slams the door.
Yeah, and you see his body just convulsing. Yeah, it's a horrible death. Mm-hmm. And then poor Pam, she gets it the worst, I think.
Yeah, she gets hung up on a meat hook.
Yeah, what they done there
and put in a freezer.
Yeah, when she falls into that little room and you finally got the Ed Gein experience, kind of like the IKEA Ed Gein style. You see all the furniture and stuff like that made out of skin and yada yada.
Yep.
But when he picks her up, and and you see, and what he does is, this is where when it comes to Tobey Styles, knows how to set up a good shot without giving you everything. And with this, all he has in focus is the hook.
Yep.
And he's bringing in Pam, and then he cuts away.
Yeah.
Now the hook's out of focus, and you just see her, and he throws her on top, and he cuts away before you don't see anything.
There is very little gore and violence in this film, despite its reputation.
It's her reaction, mm-hmm. and when I said earlier about the acting, these guys have to sell it, mm-hmm. and they fucking sell it. These actors. Mm-hmm. Franklin, fuck him. He's annoying as hell. But I got to give kudos, especially Sally and Pam. their acting is just solid. You know the fear. And then she's on a meat hook, and then we see fucking Leatherface sawing her boyfriend who just got beaten in half with the chainsaw. Again, you don't see anything. There's no blood.
Exactly, because
nothing.
It's superbly handled and directed and shot. So it is. Everything's implied. You don't actually, see her getting put on the meat hook. If that was a film today, one of these gore fests today, you would actually see the hook going in and up her back and her skin being ripped. But but with Tobe Hooper, it is much more powerful, because what you don't see, your mind fills in the blanks, and that is always much more powerful. So
there's a difference between grossing somebody out for a couple seconds and then or let it linger.
Anyone can gross people out. You know what I mean? Me or you could make a film tomorrow, and we'd just have loads of
box office hit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Box office hit, that's for sure.
And we could just have loads of mindless killings and violence. But with someone like Tobe Hooper, who had real talent and skill, and despite the limited budget, in fact, the limited budget improves this film greatly. So it does, because it gives it that raw feel to it. This guy, has genuine talent, and he knows how to shoot a scene like that.
Well, that's what I was talking about. When you take Tobe Hooper away from the basics, can filmmakers, or take away from the basics, thrive doing something like a Poltergeist, or something like that, and it doesn't work? Or he needed a lot of help. Clearly, he did.
He was more suited to low-budget films where he could improvise and then show his real talent.
Again, we talked about it, and it's sad because the guy's got talent. Clearly, he does. I like a lot of his stuff, but at the end of the day, Carpenter did it better. Wes Craven did it better, and a little guy called Sam Raimi, who did low-budget horror all the way till late '90s until he decided, all right, let me do the Spider-Man thing.
Yeah.
And and he kept his team with him.
Yes.
So I don't know what happened, but I thought the Jerry death was kind of wasted. He gets bumped in the head. He opens the freezer and we see Pam come out of it. She's still alive, but she's pretty much.
That's a pretty good scene, actually. Where she jumps out of the freezer.
Yeah, I thought her coming out was right, but I thought his death was just bashed in the head, and that was it.
Yeah. The best one will always be, the most memorable one will always be Kirk for me.
Yeah. Because you don't see it. It's the first
so
kill
realistic,
major franchise.
But also it happens so it's a shock. When you're watching it for the first time, it's just like, what the fuck? What happened there? And it happens so quick, and it's so gritty and realistic. It's very, very powerful.
We talk about the independent style, and we talk about this with Halloween and how they had limited lighting. Lighting is probably one of the most expensive things on a film set. Well, what he does here, Tobe Hooper, I don't think he wanted to shoot at night personally, but he had no choice just because it's a horror film. You got to give us a night shot. And so what he did was he brought Franklin back into the picture, and obviously Sally doesn't want to take Franklin because she can't wheel him.
Yes.
She doesn't know where she's going here, and it's in the middle of the woods, and he's in a wheelchair. God love him. But he decides, I'll hold the flashlight. I want to come with you. You really feel... This is where the character turns for me a bit, because you feel sorry for him. I want to come with you. I'll hold the flashlight, because he knows he's useless. But the flashlight's huge, but it's Tobe's way of getting light in the middle of this scene. Do you get what I'm going with this?
100%. Yeah. Again, it goes back to him being a great improviser.
Yes.
Or we'll get light in here. Well, we'll write it into the scene. Yeah.
And then you've got the fucking great shot when they're just talking, and then out comes Leatherface, and he's got the flashlight in his hand, so we can see Leatherface clearly from the flashlight that Franklin's holding, and then Sally gets it.
Brilliant direction.
And again, you don't see it coming. It's a really good jump scare.
And actually, Franklin's the only one gets killed with a chainsaw.
Yeah,
and a Chainsaw Massacre.
Well, it isn't called the Texas Chainsaws Massacre.
It should have been called the Texas Chainsaw and Sledgehammer Massacre.
Yeah,
and Hook Massacre.
And again, going back to the actress, Sally, she's fucking... I can't believe she had a voice after this.
She must have been
screaming
exhausted with all that fucking screaming and running. But you know what? She sells it 100%.
I know. 100%.
Yeah.
And usually when you hear women screaming in horror films, like, oh, Jesus, shut up.
It's grating. It becomes grating.
But
for her,
she
it is so believable and relentless and intense.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
She sells it well.
Yeah.
And again, we're talking about how now the flashlight's gone because Franklin's been killed, so you're now in the dark. So what Toby did, and again, this is just me thinking outside the box. I'm not saying he did this. You've got Sally wearing bright white pants, and you've got our boy Leatherface wearing a bright yellow apron with a bright yellow chainsaw. And the reason I think he did this was because they stick out.
So you could see, the viewer could see them.
Yes. Again, another creative choice. So if you have less lighting, improvise.
Yeah.
And it shows well. And it doesn't, you're not sitting there squinting trying to see what's going on. And he knows how to use the woods long enough to get her to the house where it's obviously brighter. So when they get her and they bring her to dinner time, they're obviously going to beat her with the mallet.
It's
eat her.
By far the best scene. It's fucking terrifying. It's intense, and it's so darkly humorous as well. You know,
is the grandfather alive then?
The grandfather's alive throughout it. He's just very, very old and weak.
He looks like a zombie. I thought
played
he was a
by
vampire.
like a fucking 18-year-old or something too.
I thought he was a vampire.
No. He's a normal human. He's not supernatural. None of these characters are supernatural.
Okay, because the guy looked, and then when he's sucking on her finger, when they cut her finger and he starts sucking on her blood like a Slurpee.
The makeup's not the best. The makeup's a bit ropey. I think that's what makes you think it's maybe...
Oh, okay, because it looked like he was dead. No, it was a zombie or something.
Makeup. I think you're first sort of given that impression whenever you see him up there with the corpse of presumably his wife, up the stairs. But no, none of these characters are supernatural like vampires or anything, as far as I know anyway. It's basically just very, very old, frail, and weak. But this is just such an intense. This is like a living nightmare. This scene, and I mean that in the most complimentary way. Leatherface
is getting yelled at by the cook.
Yes,
like because he's pissed. Why'd you kill these people? Because again, even though he's a nut job, he's anti-violence.
Yeah, he's more like the sort of the heart of the family. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's pushing it, but yeah, we'll give you that one. But
he's the conscience of the family.
Leatherface has changed his face to be a woman.
Yes.
So is that Pam's face?
No. As far as I don't know whose actual skin it is, but apparently Toby Hooper and Gunnar Hansen decided that. Because Leatherface is basically so mentally handicapped, he's basically empty behind the mask, you know what I mean? And also, but he has different masks for his different duties. So he's also like the housewife, whenever he wears one of the masks, whenever he's making the dinner. He has certain chores that the family make him do. He's basically like the sort of family skivvy. And whenever he's performing each of the roles for the family, he has a different mask on.
All right, makes sense because when he's wearing the woman's mask,
there's two women's masks.
He's got a feminine sound to him.
Yeah, there's two women's masks. There's one where he's preparing the dinner, and one whenever he's like sitting down to dinner.
Okay.
And the woman's mask is particularly disturbing looking, so it is. And yeah, it's just fucking dark stuff, like, you know. Once you really sort of psychoanalyze what's going on, you know, with the character.
Yeah.
You know, this is disturbing fucking shit, like, you know. He's basically feral, and, when he's like this sort of feral sort of brother who has these certain roles and duties within the family. And he has a different mask for each occasion. How cute is that?
Well, I have a baseball cap every time I do something different.
Yeah, well, it's basically a version of that. If you were a cannibal, you know.
Yeah, me and Leatherface and Ed Gein all have something in common.
Yep.
Just mine's not made out of flesh.
Well, that's a bit disappointing, to be honest.
100% wool. So yeah, they put the hammer in the old man's head. They're gonna try to bang this poor woman's head, and she's like, "What the fuck?"
Yeah.
And clearly they're incompetents, so she's able to get away.
Yeah, and jump through another window. She jumps through a lot of fucking windows in this.
Yeah, but she's good. I mean, she sells it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the stunt woman sells it.
Yes.
And so she's running again, and again, this is the finale where Hitchhiker gets run over by the truck. Great little shot,
Brilliant.
Even though it's a mannequin, but it's shot well enough you don't really notice.
Yeah, it's a brilliant special effect.
Yeah, and then obviously I do like the fact when she's running away. Did you see in the dining room when they're eating or about to eat?
Yes.
The lampshade over the dinner table.
Yeah.
Was that a baby's face?
I'm not too sure, but I know that basically all of the household accessories are basically. Yeah, there's a lot. Again,
I think that was a baby's face, which was disturbing.
Possibly, or a small child or whatever, because
yeah,
again, it goes back to the Ed Gein, because in reality, his fucking house was like that in his farmhouse in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
When I was just a bit of a side story here, when I being like a morbid little shit all my life, back when I was a kid, and I was like a morbid little shit back then too. I used to get these real life crime weekly magazines called Murder Case Books. Would have had like the likes of the Cray twins, the Yorkshire Ripper, Dennis Nielsen and stuff. But one of them one week was Ed Gein, so I do know quite a bit about the Ed Gein case, which I read at fucking 12 years old or something. You know,
that actually explains a lot to our listening audience.
Yeah. So I've always been fascinated with the macabre. Although, you know, obviously that's real life crime and stuff. But with me, things like horror films and stuff were always like an emotional outlet to me. The real world is much, much more horrific, you know, and it's my horror and fictional horror is my escape from the horrors of the real world. However, things like Murder Case Books were based on real life cases, but I had a sort of reading something in a magazine, even if it was a real life case, there was still that distance there because I wasn't personally affected by it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I gotcha. Yeah, so that's the ending. I mean, it's a nice little ending where she's getting away,
very iconic shot,
and
well.
she's laughing hysterically at the end, and he is dancing with the chainsaw again, improv by Gunnar.
Yeah, brilliant.
And I set against a beautiful sunset.
Yes,
it was just a beautiful shot. As you can say, it as creepy as the scene is. Mm-hmm. Again, going back to the cinematographer, getting that right shot at the right moment.
Brilliant, and so disturbing and sort of haunting and atmospheric.
His little tribal dance, I guess you can say.
Yeah.
But there you go. Yeah, listen, I mean, I think we're all going to praise the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I'm going to praise it pretty much for, I mean, it's got flaws. I can't stand Franklin for most of it. I get what he was trying to do. I understand we got to feel we wanted him to get it by the time he gets it, because we got this poor guy in a wheelchair. He's going to get it, so let's make him annoying. That was probably his plan.
I mean, the likes of, you know, even bumping off within films or and fiction, I have no problem bumping off sympathetic characters or you know, because it's fiction, and you know, ultimately it doesn't really matter, you know. So, but yeah, I see what you're getting at. The sort of yeah. Mm-hmm.
From the, you know, all the way from the, you know, from the opening narration to the introduction of the Hitchhiker, to the Sally and to Pam. Actually, all the actors in this were spot on. Usually, Friday 13th would be a good example. As much as I love that film, the acting's horrid. even with Kevin Bacon.
A lot of these sort of films, have ropey acting. But it's I think basically the good acting and the realistic performances from the cast could be probably boiled down to the fact that it was apparently such a nightmarish shoot. But so they were genuinely sort of so upset and tense, but also great direction by Hooper.
I mean, you've got the, I should give a shout out. We talked about the cinematographer, we talked about Tobey, but we surely have to give a shout out to the production designer. Because when you go in that house, it's so detailed with bones and skins and all this other stuff. It's that the hundreds of man hours that must have taken to do that, the little details. Yeah. It's just amazing. There's no score in this film. It's all chainsaw sounds and sound effects. What Stanley Kubrick did in The Shining. So it's got so much going for it. The flaws are minor, to be honest with you.
I would, however, say just I mean, I think it's great and all that there. I would say, while some films, for me, do improve on repeat viewings, this film, on repeat viewings, does lose a lot of its power. You know,
I disagree, and the reason I say that, I think you're saying that because there's been so many over the top sequels that I think it might diminish the original.
Yeah.
Friday the 13th would be a perfect example. I think Halloween survived, to be honest with you, but I can see your point.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I still think it's great, and I still did think it's great watching it. You know, a couple of nights ago for the podcast. I think it was last night, but it was the night before. But yeah, I mean, it still has. I still think it's great, and it still has a lot of power. But the first time I watched that, you know, quite a lot of years ago now, I mean, it was just like a sucker punch. It was like a chainsaw to the. It was like a fucking sledgehammer to the head. You know. It was.
Well, I mean, you can say that about The Exorcist.
Yeah, that's
true.
True.
You know, you can say you know what's coming, and I think that's why we have movies like Hostel and Saws and stuff like that. They're fine films; they can do their own thing. I'm cool, but I'm not a big fan of torture porn.
No.
Believe it or not, it doesn't have that impact as much as you. It's because we've all now got this fucking Hostel and Saw films, which are torture porn that are out. Because we're not getting what we're getting now, people think this is more tame, and that's the mentality that's happening now. I disagree. I think it's more powerful than seeing it actually happening. I'd rather have it, and it still holds up for me.
No, I agree with that there. I'm just saying that the power, just like that first time, experiencing it for the first time, just it was so memorable for me.
Well, that's different. I mean, yeah, if you experience something for the first time, and then it's then you know the magic trick.
But I agree that there is much more power, and it's a million times a better film than the likes of Hostel, or some of those Saw sequels and stuff, or, you know, all of these torture porn, you know, this torture porn craze that was in the early 2000s. I mean, this is a much better directed and made film, despite its minuscule budget.
Yeah, it guys. I think we're all on the same page. I don't think anyone listening to this podcast agrees. Nobody. I don't think anybody really. Well, I think a couple of people just don't like the grindhouse feel. Okay, everybody, that's a wrap on this one. Thanks for listening in. We're going to be jumping into the I guess you could say, requel, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022, and I look forward to talking about that. Again, thank you. A lot of downloads this week, which we greatly appreciate. And you can always follow us at CitizenFrame_podcasts, and of course on Facebook. Give us some shouts if you want us to do a movie review for you. Please don't make it horror at this point, because I think we're all burnt out, especially after watching all this Texas Chainsaw. All right, guys, have a good one. Thanks for joining us. I think I've lost Trevor, but we'll get him back for the next one. Take care.